young successful businesswoman Yoon Se-ri established her own company that became recognized for its well-known brand. The media hype surrounding her celebrity relationships became powerful business opportunities that Se-ri used to make her jewelry products stand out in photographs so sales would increase. When those photographs surfaced in the news media, both her accessory demand and her company profits rose dramatically while her stock values surged. Growing up in a family of means, Se-ri developed financial independence because she had always rejected her father's privileged funding. The path she built ran independently from her family's business enterprise. She outranked her two older brothers in skill and achievement, which caused them to resent her business triumphs. The chairman Yoon Jung-myung had determined that his daughter Se-ri would lead the family business instead of his sons who wanted the inheritance. She accepted her father's decision to lead the firm one day, yet requested first to dedicate herself to expanding her business. Before attaining her father's inheritance, Se-ri decided to become a first-hand tester of the new skydiving product from her firm. The unfavorable weather conditions received no attention from her when her secretary warned her about it because she chose to proceed. During the airborne photo shoot, a savage windstorm violently appeared as Se-ri floated through the air. She witnessed a floating car in the distant horizon, which turned out to be a tornado as the gusts strengthened beyond belief. The violent storm took her from the sky before she could do anything. The world surrounding her became unfamiliar after Se-ri woke up from unconsciousness while hanging from a tree branch. The employee felt intense panic because she could not reach her employees through her walkie-talkie, which failed to receive any signal. She became desperate, causing her to shout as hard as she could because she needed somebody to respond. The mobile unit operated by Captain Ri Jeong Hyeok, who served as a border soldier, came across the forest at that time. Hearing her cries, he approached and found her hanging from the tree. Se-ri, relieved to see another person, was about to thank him until she noticed the emblem on his uniform. He was a North Korean soldier. Raising his weapon, Se-ri, realizing she had no choice, removed her gear and jumped, only to stumble and fall into his arms. She hastily explained that she was a South Korean businesswoman who had been caught in a tornado while skydiving. However, Jeong Hyeok remained skeptical and insisted on taking her in for questioning. The thought of being treated as a spy, along with uncertain detention, pushed Se-ri to make an immediate escape. The soldiers, led by Jeong Hyeok, started a chase toward her. She escaped the minefield by chance as she escaped from her frantic flight. Surprisingly, she made it across safely. Soldiers refused to accept the identical danger, so they searched for alternative passage to catch up with Se-ri. Se-ri finally arrived at a fence constructed with barbed wire when she thought she had finally reached South Korean territory. The soldiers sounded warning shots when she approached the fence with the intention to cross, so she took a desperate jump over the obstacle. Jeong Hyeok witnessed her disappearance while she ran away from him into the distance. After noticing her escape, Jeong Hyeok sprinted toward the border guards, only to observe that they were completely absorbed in the television drama Winter Sonata. At the same time, Se-ri found herself in the peaceful countryside of North Korea, where she encountered people only using the term comrade. She sensed the complete control of the system, which included regular power outages combined with military-style school children movements. The security department vehicle suddenly appeared as it moved toward her. The situation grew critical when she realized detection, so Ri Jeong Hyeok rushed her into a nearby residence to protect her. In the dim illumination, Se-ri managed to see him properly and developed a strong fascination for his breathtaking appearance. She looked for his assistance in escaping the moment she saw him during this challenging situation. Ri Jeong Hyeok followed his duty to expose her, but unresolved aspects kept him from doing so. Though Cho remained unconvinced and demanded identification, Jeong Hyeok insisted that she was a covert operative from a classified intelligence unit. With no proof otherwise, Cho had no choice but to leave. Once they were alone, Se-ri leaned on Jeong Hyeok playfully, embracing her role as his supposed fiancé. He quickly pushed her away, clarifying that he had only lied to protect her. Since she would be leaving soon, it was the only way to ensure her safety. As gossip spread through the village, the women speculated about their relationship. Hearing rumors that Jeong Hyeok wasn't interested in her, Se-ri felt an unexpected pang of pride. She demanded that once she left, he should tell everyone she had dumped him. Furthermore, he was forbidden from dating anyone for at least 6 months. Jeong Hyeok simply stared at her, speechless. The two stayed awake throughout the night while talking after Sari did not succeed in falling asleep. The talk showed Sari that Jeong Hyeok used to follow music as his academic field. the people of the town had started gathering outside Ri Jeong Hyeok's house, so Sari proposed going out for a walk so they could display her exceptional beauty in front of everyone. Jeong Hyeok spent a few seconds to tie the back of her hair because, according to him, only performance artists and foreign visitors release their hair at this location. Sari made him touch her head when they left, as she still wanted to maintain normal affection, and she added a big goodbye wave for effect. She displayed her affection towards him in a way that she needed every person to witness. At the time of departure, Sari organized a short awards ceremony. Dong received the first place recognition for his kind and pleasant disposition, which brought him a corn sack as his prize. Second place honors in the awards ceremony went to Ju Myeok for his passion of watching Korean dramas, which granted him dinner with actress Choi Ji-woo. The group member, Kwang Beom, received the National Treasure Middle Prize, which was the humorous third place award because he was deemed the most attractive among them. Sari offered him between meeting a South Korean actress and having a hug. However, he declined both. During the conclusion of the awards, Jeong Hyeok displayed mild disappointment because he failed to win an award. Sari guided him to the garden and gave him a tomato plant, which she obtained by trading half a bag of potatoes. Jeong Hyeok expressed dislike toward tomatoes, yet Sari motivated him to start caring for it, as if the plant were his furry friend, through regular tender conversations. Later that evening, as the soldiers reminisced about their time with Sari, everyone except Pyokai Soo seemed sentimental, unwilling to say goodbye. That night, Jeong Hyeok secretly took Sari on a drive to escort her to her departure point. Before parting, she removed the hairband he had given her and handed it back, thanking him for everything. She admitted that she wasn't sure if they would ever see each other again. Once they arrived at the dock, Jeong Hyeok intended to personally make sure she boarded the ship safely. However, an unexpected problem arose when the Coast Guard approached their boat for inspection. The captain of the vessel quickly instructed them to hide below deck, explaining that due to a recent surge in border crossing attempts, inspections had become stricter. As the guards boarded, the captain attempted to bribe them with a phone card, but it was useless. Meanwhile, hidden inside the cabin, Sari turned to Jeong Hyeok in a panic, urging him to think of a solution. With no other options, he resorted to a tactic straight out of a South Korean drama. He pulled her close and kissed her. The moment the Coast Guard opened the door, they were taken aback by the sight. The ship's captain quickly explained that the two were a young couple on a fishing trip, though the lack of any fishing equipment made the explanation seem suspicious. Thinking on her feet, Sari chimed in, claiming they were newlyweds, which explained Ri Jeong Hyeok's passionate behavior. The guards, surprisingly convinced by the story, decided to let them go. However, in the midst of the commotion, Sari had missed her opportunity to board the ship bound for South Korea. Standing at the dock, she watched the vessel disappear into the distance, her heart sinking. She tried to reassure herself, reminding herself that life was full of setbacks. She asked Jeong Hyeok if there would be another chance to leave soon, but he explained that due to heightened security, she would have to wait at least 10 to 15 more days. Frustrated, Sari lashed out, not because of the delay, but because she felt he wasn't offering her any emotional comfort. Instead, he was treating her predicament as a logistical problem, rather than recognizing how she felt. To distract herself, she suddenly brought up the kiss, demanding to know why he had done it so convincingly. Jeong Hyeok, caught off guard, had no idea how to respond. After they returned to the village, Sari left a note for Jeong Hyeok, neatly folded her bedding, and set out once again, this time with a parachute in hand. Her plan was simple. She would reach a cliff and attempt to use the parachute to cross into South Korea. If something went wrong, she decided to leave it up to fate. She tried to reach her team through a walkie-talkie, but there was no response. Just then, Jeong Hyeok arrived. He pointed out that she had made far too much noise while leaving. She had slammed the door, taken the parachute, and even activated a communication device, all of which would attract attention. He questioned if she had done it on purpose, subconsciously trying to get him to come after her. Before Sari could answer, her walkie-talkie suddenly emitted a signal. Jeong Hyeok immediately knew what this meant. The electromagnetic waves would alert the authorities. Meanwhile, Chul Kong, the officer tasked with monitoring the area, received an alert about unusual radio signals coming from the mountains. Wasting no time, he dispatched a team to investigate. Realizing they were out of options, Jeong Hyeok grabbed Sari's hand and led her toward the cliff. Without hesitation, the two of them leaped off together. As they fell, Sari clung to him, overwhelmed with gratitude for his unwavering presence. Chulkang came too late to the scene, which left him mad with fury. The pursuit ended in failure for him when he managed to capture Sari for yet another time. Sari went back to her village to reconnect with her team members before they enjoyed a focused dinner meal. Jeong Hyeok made her best attempt at encouraging Sari by saying she still had options to return home safely. Sari experienced major changes since the day she reached North Korea. Breakfast was an expensive ritual in her original home, although she hardly ate it during her daily routine. The burnt rice mixed with sugar appeared extravagant enough for Sari to consider it a special dining pleasure. Part of her became concerned because she seemed to be adapting to life in North Korea, which had previously been completely out of reach for her. The absence of rank authority represented her main barrier to returning home to South Korea, according to her perspective. Under different circumstances with a superior military position, he could have conveniently arranged her departure. The promotion opportunity would open up for Jeong Hyeok if he earned the trust of a senior officer because authorities could boost those they approved. Whenever his name was mentioned, this resulted in avoided support for his promotions, as the others refused to help him progress. Sari refused to wait for others anymore, so she determined to execute her own plan. Young Ai was the wife of a lieutenant colonel, so Sari considered that Young Ai might help Jeong Hyeok advance in his career. Sari decided to stay at Young Oi's birthday party as a first step toward winning her support. During that period, Kwang Beum shared with Jeong Hyeok about her plans since she had attended the event to assist with his career advancement. Jeong Hyeok initially treated it as nothing more than one of Sari's needless schemes, however he could not suppress an unwanted smile. Kwang Beum then teased him further, suggesting that Sari only went to such lengths because she believed he lacked the power to help her escape. At this, Ri Jeong Hyeok expression darkened slightly. Was he really as powerless as she thought? That evening, Jeong Hyeok rode his bicycle to the general's residence, pretending to pass by coincidence. In reality, he was circling the area, waiting for Sari to come out. When she finally did, she immediately assumed he had been there deliberately, but he flatly denied it. He wanted her to realize that he was not as weak as she believed. Sari then noticed something peculiar. The front of his bicycle was wrapped with a soft towel, as if placed there just for her. On the ride home, the darkness surrounded them. Sari assumed Jeong Hyeok was watching over her for safety, but he stubbornly refused to admit it. When they arrived, they discovered their friends gathered in the yard, grilling clams over an open flame. Back in South Korea, Sari had only ever eaten grilled clams with red wine at Michelin-starred restaurants, but she quickly adapted to the simpler setting. The moment she tasted the smoky charred seafood, she fell in love with it. Jeong Hyeok secretly watched her reactions, and despite himself, he found her delighted expressions contagious. Her joy was enough to make him smile too. The next morning, Jeong Hyeok was up early, brewing coffee. Sari, still drowsy, followed the rich aroma to the kitchen. She was surprised. She hadn't expected to find coffee in North Korea. It turned out that Jeong Hyeok had studied abroad, and when he returned home, he brought coffee beans with him. Alongside the coffee, he had also prepared a special soup to help her recover from the previous night's drinking. As he prepared to leave for work, Sari ran to the porch and formed a heart shape with her fingers, a playful gesture meant to convey affection. Jeong Hyeok, unfamiliar with the symbol, was puzzled and later asked Jeong Hyeok about its meaning. When Jeong Hyeok explained that in South Korea, it signified love or admiration, Sari joined Young Ai on her shopping visit because she wanted to grow closer with her boss. Vendors actively promoted elite cosmetics, which originated from South Korea during the shopping trip through the market. Sari's shock grew when she recognized the market products as items manufactured by her own company. Later, Young A developed positive feelings about Sari because she witnessed her dedication and expertise at the market. Around evening time, Sari became aware that she had separated from her friends. The combined noise and activity of the market filled Sari with alarm when she discovered herself alone among all the people. As soon as Jeong Hyeok learned Sari went missing, he ran to search for her. With a candle in his hands, he moved from pathway to pathway inside the market while looking for any trace of her. She approached the candle slowly while sharing an emotional connection with him when their gazes finally crossed. Despite teasing her, Jeong Hyeok pretended to have finally acquired the scent candle she constantly wanted. The emotional wave overflowing from Sari caused her eyes to produce tears. From the darkness, Sari pondered that any girl who witnessed Jeong Hyeok searching for her with a candle would definitely develop feelings for him. Jeong Hyeok revealed his engagement at this critical instant to Sari. Sari, unfazed, brushed it off. She exhibited confidence in her self-assurance since she had multiple male suitors in South Korea, which led her to state that she would soon return back to her home country. When she spoke disdainfully about her other admirers, a brief wave of jealousy passed across Ri Jeong Hyeok's features. As they continued their walk, Sari accused him of playing both sides, leading her on while still being engaged to someone else. Jeong Hyeok, however, insisted that he had only claimed she was his wife to protect her. She worried that his fiancé would eventually find out and create trouble for them. But Jeong Hyeok reassured her. His betrothed, Seo Dawn, was studying in Russia, so there was no immediate danger of her interfering. However, his confidence was short-lived. The moment they reached his house, they were greeted by an unexpected guest, Seo Dan herself. Sari, sensing trouble, quickly stepped aside, leaving the two to their conversation. Seo Dan greeted Jeong Hyeok warmly, and just as he attempted to introduce Sari, she cut him off. She had come with a request. She wanted him to use his upcoming days off to arrange a meeting between their families to discuss their engagement. Without waiting for a response, she swiftly left. Concerned about her traveling alone at night, Jeong Hyeok offered to escort her back to Pyongyang. But before leaving, he hastily reassured her that Sari was just a fellow soldier. Sari, catching on to the situation, quickly nodded in agreement. Seo Dan then asked him directly, would they still be together once his mission was complete? Without hesitation, Jeong Hyeok confirmed that once Sari left, their paths would never cross again. Sari, standing quietly nearby, played along, pretending to be indifferent. As she turned to leave, Jeong Hyeok suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the door. His voice was firm as he instructed her to stay inside and lock the door when he wasn't around. As Jeong Hyeok drove Seo Dan back to Pyongyang, his eyes frequently darted to the rearview mirror. Seo Dan, perceptive as always, sensed that his heart was no longer entirely hers. During the ride, she reminisced about their past encounters, noting that this was their 7th meeting. 4 of those had involved their parents, and the 5th had been their engagement ceremony, an event that had taken place 7 years ago. In an ideal world, they would have been married soon after, yet an emotional gap had always lingered between them. Despite this, Seo Dan was determined to honor the arrangement set by their families, and expected Jeong Hyeok to do the same. He reassured her that he would do his best to comply. Meanwhile, back at home, Sari eagerly listened to the sounds outside, hoping to hear Ri Jeong Hyeok's arrival. When she rushed to check, she was surprised to find Young-ae and her friends instead. They sympathized deeply with her situation, their expressions filled with concern. Feeling slightly awkward, Sari thanked them for their kindness. However, Young-ae, visibly frustrated, rallied the group to turn their backs on Jeong Hyeok in solidarity with Sari. After the gathering, Sari personally walked Young-ae and her friends to the door. Before they left, she seized the opportunity to bring up Ri Jeong Hyeok's potential promotion, asking Young-ae for her support. Young-ae happily agreed to help. Later that night, Sari sat with a glass of wine, waiting for Jeong Hyeok. When he finally returned home, his eyes immediately landed on the makeshift boundary she had created using beer can tabs. It was clear. Crossing that line symbolized deepening their connection. Sari silently observed him, her face betraying her frustration. According to her calculations, he should have arrived home around 1 a.m., yet he was only returning now. Her expression practically shouted, "I'm upset." Sensing this, Jeong Hyeok quickly explained that he had been meeting with his father to secure a way for her to leave the country. His plan was to have her listed as a reserve athlete for the national track and field team, allowing her to travel to Europe and then make her way back to South Korea. The first step required her to go to Pyongyang to obtain a passport. Sari attempted adopting local apparel and hair modification to fit in with the North Korean population. She styled her hair in the same way as North Korean women, while purchasing an unassuming clothing item. Despite Chul Kong continuing to doubt the situation, his observance of Ri Jeong Hyeok's home remained unceasing while he directly questioned his employees about him. Jeong Hyeok's timely arrival prevented the team members from facing any additional questions from Chul Kong. His team members managed to maintain their humor, even though they suffered bruises in the recent scene. The emotional state of his men created discomfort for Jeong Hyeok. Jumok held a positive outlook as he declared the men felt like family, which allowed him to ignore unnecessary formalities. Pyo Chi-soo chose to hold a grudge against Sari because of their troubles, so he required her to apologize. Sari apologized deeply out of guilt while showing her thanks to the soldiers. After that, the group decided to walk together. The group members noticed Se-ri sending multiple hearts not just to Jeong Hyeok, but also Kwang Beom, twice exposed her heart gestures to others. The development brought out anger in Jeong Hyeok. Jeong Hyeok maintained a close watch on Se-ri during their way back home to their residence. Jeong Hyeok interrupted our conversation and demanded to know what number of people received her heart emoticons. He sounded extremely irritated during this question. He announced his intention to use the bed for sleeping tonight because that would be an exception to his nightly floor routine. He kept himself on the edge of the bed while deep in his thoughts as he tried to understand the significance of her hand signals. The train transported them to Pyongyang the day after. Everyone chatted cheerfully except for Se-ri, who sat quietly, lost in thought. She worried about what would happen to Jeong Hyeok once she left. Meanwhile, Jeong Hyeok recalled his father's warning. There would be no protection for him if things went south. Despite this, he reassured Se-ri, telling her everything would go smoothly. Then, without warning, the train came to a halt. A power outage had stalled their journey, forcing them to wait for 16 hours. As the night wore on, street vendors climbed aboard, eager to sell their goods. Jeong Hyeok led Se-ri to a grassy patch to rest. Nearby, people wrapped themselves in blankets. Seeing them, Se-ri couldn't help but sigh with envy. Not missing a beat, Jeong Hyeok went and bought her a thick cotton blanket. Before he could even settle down, Se-ri expressed a sudden craving for corn. Without hesitation, he set off to find some. When he returned, Se-ri gazed at him with newfound admiration. She remarked that he had a warm heart and would undoubtedly make a great husband and father one day. However, Jeong Hyeok simply stated that he never allowed himself to think about the future. Expectations often led to disappointment. At that moment, memories of his past washed over him. The tragic loss of his brother while he was studying abroad. Sensing his sorrow, Se-ri gently patted his back, offering comfort. Then she shared a well-known Indian saying, "Sometimes the wrong train takes us to the right place." She admitted that she too had once lost her way, making mistakes that ultimately led her to North Korea. Even if life didn't unfold as planned, she wished for Ri Jeong Hyeok happiness. As the night deepened, Jeong Hyeok draped his coat over Se-ri as she drifted off to sleep, allowing her to rest her head on his shoulder. The following morning, the train resumed its journey, and after the long ride, they finally arrived in Pyongyang. Se-ri had her ID photos taken, then turned to Jeong Hyeok with a hopeful expression, suggesting they take a picture together as a keepsake. He flatly refused, stating there was no reason for it. Yet, just as they were about to leave, he secretly asked the photographer for an extra copy of her picture. As they exited the shop, a familiar figure caught Ri Jeong Hyeok's eye, Sung-joon, Se-ri's former boyfriend. Sung-joon grabbed her wrist, urging her toward an elevator. Without thinking, Jeong Hyeok hurried after them. When he caught up, he was stunned to see them holding hands. Without hesitation, he pinned Sung-joon against the wall and demanded his identification. Se-ri, referring to Jeong Hyeok as her bodyguard, calmly asked him to let Sung-joon go. After Sung-joon departed, Jeong Hyeok was left brooding. He felt less like Se-ri's protector and more like a glorified babysitter. Yet, despite his grumbling, his actions told another story, shielded her from the bustling crowd, and even intercepted a stray ball that rolled in her direction. Once they arrived at the hotel, Jeong Hyeok reminded her to keep quiet. He meticulously searched the room for surveillance equipment, explaining that most hotels were bugged. After confirming the room was secure, he stepped into the adjacent one, leaving Se-ri alone with her thoughts. Se-ri wanted to ask Sung-joon to help relay a message to her family, letting them know she was safe. In the past, they had come close to marriage, and now, fate had brought them together once more, in an unexpected place, North Korea. She firmly believed that their paths were destined to cross again. However, Jeong Hyeok disagreed, dismissing her idea of fate as mere coincidence. He pointed out that when she landed in North Korea by accident, caught in a storm, he was the one who found her. When she was on the run, she somehow ended up at his house. To him, that was what true fate looked like. The news that Jeong Hyeok arrived at Pyongyang prompted Seo-dan to visit his hotel where she met with him. She planned an evening dinner meeting between their family members. Jeong Hyeok willingly followed the instruction. Throughout his life, he upheld the responsibilities assigned to him, so he continued to do the same now. The families got together for a dinner at that time. The growing beauty of Seo-dan caught Jeong Hyeok's mother's eyes, so she praised the way Seo-dan developed into an attractive young woman. Seo-dan's mother expressed sadness about her daughter's remarkable looks, since it brought her pain due to aging. The older woman implored both parties to move forward with their marriage soon after she spoke. The father of Jeong Hyeok made an official declaration to set their wedding date at the final Saturday of the upcoming month. His mother faced Jeong Hyeok to get his thoughts about their situation. His father's nature made it clear that any decision he made left no space for discussion. Despite agreeing externally, he refused to feel love for the situation in his heart. Saeri encountered Seodon suddenly at the restroom. During their conversation, Seodon slipped that she planned to marry Ri Jeong Hyeok later in the following month, and she did not expect obstacles because Saeri would already be gone from North Korea by that time. For Seodon, the absence of Saeri served as her ultimate gift at the wedding festivities. Preceding dinner, Jeong Hyeok took Seodon and her mother to their leave before hurrying to search for Saeri. He brought her to a riverside pub for enjoying fried chicken and beer because she told him earlier she wanted to have the unpretentious experience of drinking beer next to the river. Midway through their meal, a sudden power outage plunged the place into darkness, but the staff quickly lit candles at each table. When the lights returned, Saeri noticed the season's first snowfall through the window. In Seoul, there was a belief that couples who watched the first snowfall together would stay together forever. After having one too many drinks, Saeri dozed off against Jeong Hyeok's shoulder. Initially, he tried to move away, but she protested, asking him to let her rest there a little longer. Before she left North Korea, she wanted to create as many happy memories as possible. With that thought in mind, she suggested they go on a picnic with the entire group. Seeing no reason to refuse, Jeong Hyeok granted everyone a day off to enjoy the outing. During the picnic, some of the soldiers ventured to the riverbank to catch crabs while the others relaxed. Everyone was in high spirits, making the most of their final moments together. After eating, they held a farewell ceremony for Saeri. Pyo Chi-soo even recited a heartfelt poem, urging her to be careful once she returned to South Korea and to live a meaningful life. He also reminded her not to forget the people she had met here. In response, Saeri sang a song for them. As she sang, she suddenly spotted Jeong Hyeok walking toward her, and their gazes locked. That night, Jeong Hyeok escorted Saeri to a military vehicle. Before she left, he told her, "Once you leave, erase everything that happened here, including me. Treat it all as a dream." Nearby, Manbok was still eavesdropping under Cho Cheol gang's orders. However, as he listened to their emotional farewell, he felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. In the end, he made a call to inform Cho Cheol gang that Saeri was about to leave. Kwang Boom was responsible for driving Saeri to the airport, but along the way, he noticed two military trucks trailing closely behind them. Soon, another truck appeared ahead, blocking their path. Panic set in as it became evident that they were being pursued. Just as the truck was about to ram into them, Jeong Hyeok arrived on his motorbike, firing shots at the approaching vehicle. But their attackers retaliated, shooting at him. His motorcycle skidded to the ground, leaving him momentarily vulnerable. The truck in front continued its assault, determined to crush Saeri and Kwang Boom. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Jeong Hyeok reappeared. He pushed his motorbike under the enemy truck, then aimed and shot at its fuel tank. The explosion was instant and massive. Saeri jumped out of the car in shock, running toward Jeong Hyeok to check on him. As they worried over each other's injuries, the truck driver, who had survived the blast, rose and fired in their direction. Kwang Boom was also hit, his leg wounded. Even after falling, Jeong Hyeok mustered his remaining strength to take down the shooter before finally collapsing. Unbeknownst to Saeri, Jeong Hyeok had orchestrated a backup plan before her departure. On the day of their picnic, he had arrived late because he had been modifying his motorbike for off-road travel. He also secured additional weapons, determined to ensure her safe return. Kwang Boom rushed to check Jeong Hyeok's injuries. Realizing there was no time to waste, Saeri grabbed the car keys and drove him to the hospital, abandoning her chance to leave for South Korea. Upon arrival, the doctors informed them that Jeong Hyeok needed a blood transfusion, but the hospital had run out of reserves. Kwang Boom urged Saeri to go to the airport before it was too late, but she refused. Instead, she volunteered to donate her blood to save him. As she waited outside the operating room, she found a small photograph of herself tucked inside Jeong Hyeok's blood-stained clothing. Only when the doctor informed her that his surgery had been successful did she finally breathe a sigh of relief. That night, she stayed by his bedside, reminiscing about their time together. For her, Jeong Hyeok had become someone irreplaceable. In his unconscious state, Jeong Hyeok dreamed of the most unforgettable piano performance of his life. The audience had erupted in applause, but before he could revel in the moment, he received devastating news. His brother had died in an accident back in Pyongyang. When Jeong Hyeok finally woke up, He was surprised to see Se-ri standing near the window. Frustration immediately flared within him. He had risked everything to ensure her safe return, yet she had stayed behind. "You were supposed to leave," he said bitterly. "Now, all my efforts have gone to waste." Overwhelmed, Se-ri silently walked away. Later, during a follow-up examination, the doctor casually remarked that Jeong Hyeok and Se-ri were a perfect match, not just in temperament, but even in blood type. Thanks to Se-ri's donation, he had survived. The doctor then mentioned that he had advised her not to cry after the transfusion, yet she had wept the entire time. Despite her weakness from blood loss, her concern for him remained unwavering. Ri Jeong Hyeok, in turn, apologized for his earlier harsh words. For Se-ri, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was that he was alive. Then, in a soft voice, Jeong Hyeok asked, "You've always wanted to go home, so why didn't you leave?" Tears welled up in Se-ri's eyes as she replied, "Because I wanted to protect you, just once." She then pouted, telling him not to look at her with such affectionate eyes. But in that moment, Jeong Hyeok could no longer hold back. He leaned in and kissed her. Ri Jeong Hyeok comrades paid him a visit in the hospital, and Seung-joon made a pointed remark that Jeong Hyeok had been shot because he failed to dodge in time, not because he was trying to shield Se-ri. However, Se-ri knew the truth and was determined to send his friends away, fearing for their safety. Later, she confronted Jeong Hyeok, who had been pretending to be asleep. She asked him directly if he had taken the bullet for her, and without hesitation, he admitted that had he moved, she would have been the one injured. That night, after switching off the lights, Jeong Hyeok insisted that Se-ri go to bed while he lay on the cold floor, but she couldn't bear to see him, a recovering patient, in such discomfort. Eventually, they had to sleep together. Meanwhile, Seo-dan arrived at the hospital and noticed the carefully mended clothing placed near the window, evidence of Se-ri's presence. Seizing the moment, Jeong Hyeok finally spoke his heart. "It's time for me to say what a real man should say," he told her. Even if he didn't love her, he might have gone through with the marriage, but now his heart belonged to someone else. Seo-dan refused to accept it, believing he was simply confused because Se-ri was about to leave. She remained determined to marry him. Fearing Chul-kang's suspicions, Se-ri sought refuge at Seung-joon's villa. Oblivious to Ri Jeong Hyeok's confession, Seo-dan was busy shopping for a wedding dress. While flipping through a magazine, she stumbled upon an article revealing Se-ri's true identity. She was the daughter of a wealthy South Korean tycoon who had accidentally crossed into North Korea. Stunned, Seo-dan rushed to Jeong Hyeok to confirm the news. At that moment, Jeong Hyeok had been tirelessly searching for Se-ri. Desperate, he used his authority to request the hospital director to check surveillance footage. He discovered that she had been taken away by someone driving a car registered to a North Korean guest house. He was about to set off to rescue her when Seo-dan confronted him. Without hesitation, he admitted that he had known about Se-ri's identity all along, but had chosen to protect her. He had even helped her devise ways to return home, fully aware of the dangers. No matter what happened, he was willing to take the risk. Meanwhile, Seung-joon warned Se-ri that Jeong Hyeok had drawn the attention of high-ranking officials because of her. If she truly cared for him, the best thing she could do was disappear from his life. Those words planted doubt in Se-ri's mind. Jeong Hyeok, desperate to find her, drove an ambulance through thick fog and nearly tumbled off a cliff. Forced to turn back, he sought another plan. His comrades helped him locate the guest house, and using the given coordinates, he navigated through the dense forest. Upon arrival, he swiftly cut off the power and used the ensuing confusion to sneak inside. After skillfully taking down the guards, he found Se-ri standing in shock at the sight of him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Jeong Hyeok anxiously asked if she was hurt. Tears welled in Se-ri's eyes as she questioned why he had risked his life instead of resting in the hospital. His answer was simple. He was afraid she was waiting for him, but Se-ri, determined to protect him, made a painful decision. "Let me go," she pleaded. "Leaving is the only way we can survive." But Jeong Hyeok vowed to get her home safely, no matter the cost. Even so, Se-ri forced herself to push him away. The pair encountered snowflakes while he was leaving, which caused Se-ri to start crying. Her heart warred with reason. Would exposure to cold temperatures make him suffer a collapse? She abandoned all attempts to resist her feelings as she fled to retrieve him by driving through snow-covered roads. She dragged him into an embrace as soon as she discovered him. The vehicle experienced an empty gas tank which prevented them from starting the engine. The couple looked for refuge in a close-by house because they had no other option while they made fire for warmth. Se-ri engaged Ri Jeong Hyeok in a conversation about his first romance while they spent time together. The question took him time to answer before finally revealing that she had a resemblance to a single lady raising her child on her own. The sickness which affected his body was still present, so he fell ill with fever after facing the night's cold temperature. Before dawn arrived, the group members brought themselves back to their residential area. During the Christmas holiday, Se-ri had created a special present for Jeong Hyeok. Two men disguised in black clothes stopped her on the journey home before forcing her into their vehicle. The kidnappers captured Se-ri, then made her pretend to speak with him over the phone, as she explained how she departed from North Korea. Jeong Hyeok became suspicious that something was wrong, so he wasted no time in pressing her about her location. Jeong Hyeok promised he would locate her no matter how far she might be. "Just wait for me." Se-ri continued speaking with tears in her eyes as she solemnly ended the call through her longing to stay connected with him. A kidnapper removed her mobile phone when he grabbed it without permission. The gun discharged while the individuals struggled with each other. The gunshot echo that reached Jeong Hyeok through the phone line made him freeze as terror descended into his heart. The pain of captivity led Se-ri to forget her present surroundings and remember Jeong Hyeok and tucking her in with care. No matter what, he always reassured her, "It's okay." In that moment, she longed for him more than ever. Eventually, she was taken to meet Ri Jeong Hyeok's father. Mistaking him for Seo-dan's father, she quickly declared that she had no romantic intentions toward Jeong Hyeok. His father merely responded, "So this is all my son's fault?" Se-ri immediately defended him, taking full responsibility for everything that had happened. She explained how she had blackmailed Jeong Hyeok into covering for her when she first arrived. Finally, she admitted she had feelings for him, but it was a one-sided love. Outside the door, Ri Jeong Hyeok's mother overheard everything. That night, she visited Se-ri, who immediately asked if Jeong Hyeok was safe. Mrs. Yoon-hee led her into a warm room, offering comfort. As Se-ri glanced around, she noticed the familiar decor. It reminded her of Ri Jeong Hyeok's home. Realizing the woman in front of her was his mother, she felt a mix of emotions. They talked over a bowl of noodles, and Mrs. Yoon-hee smiled as Se-ri mentioned how Jeong Hyeok had once cooked for her. Upon hearing of Se-ri's whereabouts, Jeong Hyeok rushed home. He confronted his father, demanding to know where she was. With raw honesty, he confessed that if anything happened to Se-ri, he would carry the burden of regret for the rest of his life. Touched, Mrs. Yoon-hee led Se-ri outside, reuniting the lovers. Without hesitation, they embraced, ignoring the watchful gaze of Ri Jeong Hyeok's father, who could only sigh in exasperation at their public display of affection. Mr. Young asked why his son had failed to report Se-ri's case. Jeong Hyeok admitted that he had wanted to protect her from punishment. As Se-ri gazed at him with deep affection, they leaned in for a kiss, only for his father to interrupt. "Enough," he sighed, having witnessed more romance than he could handle for one day. That evening, Jeong Hyeok and Se-ri sat together. She played a familiar piano tune, asking if he recognized it. He did. It was the piece he had written for his late brother. To her astonishment, she realized they had unknowingly crossed paths years ago. His music had once saved her in a moment of despair, proving that their fate had always been intertwined. When the time came to part, Jeong Hyeok personally escorted Se-ri to the border. Though he knew the way well, he intentionally took a longer route, savoring their last moments together. As she crossed back into South Korea, he couldn't hold back anymore. Stepping over the border, he pulled her into a final, desperate kiss. At the headquarters of Se-ri's company, a procurement ceremony was underway. As she entered the grand hall, Se-ri caught sight of her portrait and voiced her dissatisfaction with it. Then, in a dramatic reveal, she removed her sunglasses, unveiling her identity to the stunned audience. Gasps of disbelief filled the room, and within moments, the attendees scrambled to take pictures. Se-ri encouraged them to spread the news. She was alive and well. Later, she made a striking entrance at the election for the new director. Sang-ah, utterly caught off guard, was so shocked that she nearly choked on her food. After settling the corporate matters, Se-ri returned home. She relished the simple pleasures she had once taken for granted, sipping wine without worry, soaking in a spacious bathtub with an endless supply of hot water, and stretching out on her luxurious king-sized bed. Yet, despite all these comforts, something crucial was missing. Ri Jeong Hyeok. She longed for him, missing him more than she had ever imagined. Back in North Korea, Jeong Hyeok was experiencing the same torment of separation. Throughout the day, his mind was consumed by thoughts of Se-ri, imagining her beside him. While on his nightly patrol, Man-bok approached him, visibly troubled. Overcome with guilt, Man-bok decided to confess everything. He admitted that his job as an informant had made him an outcast. People feared and avoided him. Only one person had ever treated him with kindness: Jeong Hyeok's older brother, Moo Hyuk. Moo Hyuk had once given Man-bok a wallet as a birthday gift and even brought a nurse and medicine when Man-bok's son fell ill. But then, Chul Kang had discovered Man-bok's mother's smuggling activities and used them as leverage to force him into spying. During his surveillance, Man-bok had learned that Moo Hyuk possessed damning evidence against Chul Kang. To ensure its safety, Moo Hyuk had hidden the evidence inside a watch that Jeong Hyuk had given him before sending it to a pawn shop. Man-bok's betrayal led directly to Moo Hyuk's death, and now, filled with regret, he wanted to make amends. He returned Moo Hyuk's watch to Ri Jeong Hyeok. Meanwhile, in an unexpected twist of fate, Seri had unknowingly purchased that very same watch. The day she was kidnapped, she had dropped the gift box containing it, who, upon closer inspection, discovered a hidden memory card inside. Jeong Hyuk retrieved the card and reviewed its contents. It was undeniable proof of Chul Kang's crimes. Without hesitation, he sent the evidence via fax to his father, Jung Ryal. Chul Kang was soon arrested and put on trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming, ensuring he would receive a life sentence. However, he remained unfazed, even issuing a chilling threat to Jeong Hyuk. "The woman you care about. I'll deal with her personally." Just as predicted, the military convoy transporting Chul Kang was ambushed by an armored vehicle. Amid the chaos, he managed to escape. Now, a fugitive, he called Jeong Hyuk directly, warning him that he was heading to South Korea to kill Seri. Meanwhile, Seri, unaware of the impending danger, was followed by Chul Kang after leaving work. Fortunately, security personnel on patrol intervened, preventing him from getting too close. That night, unable to sleep despite taking sleeping pills, Seri decided to step outside for a walk. As she wandered under the quiet sky, snowflakes began to fall, triggering memories of Ri Jeong Hyeok. And then, as if fate had answered her heart's call, she spotted him in the crowd. Jeong Hyuk stood still, his eyes glistening with emotion. Slowly, he walked toward her, unable to blink, afraid she might disappear. Because Seri had not left behind an exact address, he had spent countless hours searching for her. Overcome with emotion, she threw herself into his arms, desperately asking about the scars on his face. With unwavering determination, Jeong Hyuk had crawled through a hidden tunnel connecting North and South Korea, enduring 20 hours of freezing cold and suffocating darkness, just to see her again. The passage was old and crumbling. Hyuk had pushed forward without hesitation. Overcome by his devotion, Seri broke down in tears. After what felt like an eternity apart, they finally held each other again. Back in North Korea, Man-bok and Jeong Hyuk's comrades were unexpectedly detained, not by enemies, but by Jeong Hyuk's father. He had discovered Jeong Hyuk's escape to South Korea and ordered his men to bring him back safely. A secret mission was devised. Disguised as athletes, the comrades would travel to South Korea. They had just 2 weeks to complete their objective. Upon arriving in South Korea, they immediately abandoned the athlete team and set off on their mission. But first, they indulged in the marvels of the modern world, rushing to a convenience store to sample a variety of instant noodles, eagerly showing them a shelf full of ready-to-eat rice meals. They all enjoyed a feast of mixed noodles, savoring every bite. Despite his strict demeanor, a North Korean operative stationed in South Korea. Later, they found refuge in a sauna, awed by its luxury. Pyo Chi-soo, ever wary, warned them about the deceptive temptations of capitalism. The others quickly agreed, but their resolve weakened when they discovered a table filled with food. Learning that payment was made with a simple wrist scan, they were astounded by capitalism's generosity. Meanwhile, Seri took Jeong Hyuk shopping to help him blend in. Before getting into the car, he instinctively knocked on the hood, an old habit to ensure no stray animals were hiding inside. To his amusement, a cat darted out. Seeing this, Seri vowed to adopt the habit herself, touched by his kindness. Yet, deep inside, she felt a lingering sadness, knowing that their time together was limited. At the shopping center, Seri personally selected outfits for Ri Jeong Hyeok. When he emerged in his new attire, even the store staff were captivated by his striking appearance. Feigning indifference, Seri claimed he looked just average, but inside, she was ecstatic. As they left, Jeong Hyuk politely held the door for everyone. waiting until the last person had passed. Back at the company, Se-ri introduced Jeong Hyeok as her personal bodyguard. Her secretary immediately sensed something. Was Se-ri falling in love again? Meanwhile, a viral video of Jeong Hyeok's gentlemanly act at the shopping center spread across social media. Netizens swooned over his charm, praising his flawless looks. Reading the comments, Jeong Hyeok secretly grinned. When Se-ri saw him reveling in the admiration, she could only pout in jealousy. Just then, Jeong Hyeok received critical intelligence, news about Chul Kong's movements. Se-ri, worried for his safety, installed a location-sharing app on his phone. However, upon reaching the meeting point, Jeong Hyeok realized too late that it was a setup, one of Chul Kang's elaborate traps. At the same time, Se-ri unknowingly approached her own danger. As she reached her car, she followed her newfound habit, tapping the hood before starting the engine. That's when she noticed something unsettling. Someone was already inside, sitting in the back seat. Realizing the danger, she calmly turned and walked away. But in her rush, she dropped her phone. Meanwhile, Ri Jeong Hyeok, having dealt with the enemy forces, called Se-ri, only to hear silence. Panic surged through him as he tracked her location, racing against time. As he hurried towards his destination, Jeong Hyeok repeatedly tried calling Se-ri, but the call was unexpectedly answered by Cheol Gang. Alarmed, Jeong Hyeok rushed to the parking lot, where he found Cheol Gang waiting for him in the shadows, a gun aimed directly at him. Just as Cheol Gang was about to pull the trigger, the entire garage was plunged into darkness. From somewhere in the dimly lit space, Se-ri's voice called out, assuring Jeong Hyeok that she was unharmed and urging him to escape. The sound of her voice brought immense relief, and without hesitation, he moved toward her, covering her mouth to keep her presence hidden. Both of them breathed deeply, reassured by each other's safety. Meanwhile, the 5 soldiers had spent their day splitting up to search for Ri Jeong Hyeok, only to gather again at a sauna in the evening to share their findings. Man Bok took it upon himself to gather intelligence about Se-ri by eavesdropping on conversations. Though his findings had little to do with Se-ri, he enthusiastically discussed the dramatic personal affair. Pyo Chi-soo, having some spare money, stood outside a fried chicken restaurant, believing it to be a prime spot for gathering information on Se-ri's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, passersby mistook him for a valet and began handing him car keys along with tips. Soon after, the shop owner approached him, mentioning that one of the staff had requested leave and offered Chi-soo a temporary job as a delivery man. Seeing an opportunity to possibly encounter Se-ri, he eagerly agreed. However, after a long day of delivering chicken, when Jeong Hyeok finally placed an order, Chi-soo was too preoccupied with eating to answer his phone, causing them to miss each other yet again. Elsewhere, Jumeok and Yoon-dong, who were supposed to be searching for clues at an internet cafe, Jumeok was engrossed in a Korean drama, tears streaming down his face, while Yoon-dong was so deep into a video game that he lost track of his mission. By sheer coincidence, the person he was competing against online happened to be Jeong Hyeok himself. The two battled intensely, their reflexes pushing each other to their limits. But in the end, Yoon-dong claimed victory. Se-ri and Jeong Hyeok settled into a quiet domestic routine, going to work in the mornings, sharing wine in the evenings. One night, while Se-ri was slightly tipsy, Jeong Hyeok confessed his desire to stay with her forever. He dreamed of marrying her, having adorable twins, playing the piano again, and growing old together. Meanwhile, the 5 soldiers finally discovered that Se-ri was about to open a new store. They decided to use the grand opening as an opportunity to sneak in and find Ri Jeong Hyeok. On the day of the event, Se-ri confidently addressed the audience, while Jeong Hyeok stood silently by her side, admiring the woman he loved. The soldiers, eager yet cautious, attempted to blend in by continuously asking for prices on various furniture pieces. Pyo Chi-soo, pretending to be a wealthy customer, boldly announced that he would purchase everything, but only if the director met him personally. His plan failed spectacularly when security began patrolling the area, forcing the group to flee. Amidst the chaos, they suddenly realized that Yoon-dong was missing, only to find him fast asleep on a luxurious bed. After several frantic attempts, they managed to wake him, and the entire group ran off, with Yoon-dong even losing his shoes in the process. As they escaped, Jeong Hyeok appeared, holding Yoon-dong's forgotten shoes. With an affectionate smile, he knelt down and helped him put them back on. It was a touching moment, marking the long-awaited reunion of the team. Overwhelmed with emotion, they embraced one another. Se-ri, equally overjoyed, greeted each of them with a warm hug. Though Chi-soo tried to maintain his usual arrogance, he couldn't resist hugging Se-ri as well. Arriving at Se-ri's home, like stepping into another world for the soldiers. The floor radiated warmth, hot water was available at all times, and the conveniences of modern life amazed them. As they gathered for a barbecue, Jeong Hyeok announced that after their long journey, he would personally serve them. However, despite his words, he ended up placing all the best cuts of meat onto Se-ri's plate. Joo Mayok chuckled, explaining that in South Korea, men who behaved like Jeong Hyeok were often called whipped. Se-ri, pleased by the compliment, beamed with pride. Later that night, Se-ri accidentally overheard Jeong Hyeok discussing his plans with Man-bok. Their time in South Korea was running out. They needed to return home soon. However, Jeong Hyeok was determined to capture Gang before leaving, ensuring that Se-ri remained safe. The next morning, Se-ri prepared herself emotionally, knowing that Jeong Hyeok could leave at any moment. Before heading to work, she said goodbye in an almost casual manner, suppressing her emotions. As Jeong Hyeok attempted to respond, she quickly interrupted, refusing to let herself cry in front of him. The moment she stepped outside, her composure cracked. That evening, when she returned home, she found the house dark and empty. The realization that Jeong Hyeok and his comrades had left hit her like a wave. Overcome with sorrow, she sank to the floor and wept. Just then, the lights flickered on. One by one, Jeong Hyeok and the soldiers stepped out, revealing a surprise birthday party they had secretly prepared. But instead of joy, Se-ri's tears only intensified. She ran outside, struggling to contain her emotions, and Jeong Hyeok followed close behind. She wasn't upset, she was afraid that celebrating with them tonight would make future birthdays unbearable. Jeong Hyeok gently embraced her from behind, comforting her with quiet reassurance. When they returned inside, the soldiers broke into an enthusiastic birthday song. As Se-ri gazed at them with deep affection, she wished she could freeze this moment forever. After making her wish, she blew out the candles. Later that night, Jeong Hyeok shyly approached Se-ri, hiding something behind his back. Stammering slightly, he revealed his gift, a pair of matching rings. Though he insisted they held no deeper meaning, tenderly he slid the ring onto her finger, and Se-ri promised never to take it off. No matter what happened, she would never forget him. The following morning, Yoon-dong marveled at Se-ri's vacuum cleaner, his curiosity making Se-ri feel a pang of sympathy. On a whim, she called the soldiers together and handed them a black credit card, urging them to indulge themselves before leaving. The soldiers excitedly hit the shops. Pyo Chi-soo scoffed at a pair of ripped jeans, remarking on the apparent poverty of South Koreans, only to fall silent when Hwang Boom confidently walked out wearing a similar pair, looking effortlessly stylish. Meanwhile, Yoon-dong fell in love with a bunny ear hat. Chi-soo, acting generous, declared he would buy 10 of each color, until he saw the price and settled for just one. Back at Se-ri's company, her secretary rushed to inform her that an actor she had once been rumored to be dating had mentioned her on social media, hinting at a desire to reconcile. Standing silently by her side, Jeong Hyeok remained expressionless. Sensing the tension, Se-ri quickly signaled the secretary to stop talking, hoping to prevent an unnecessary misunderstanding. As Se-ri's secretary continued speaking, she went on and on about other male celebrities, causing Jong Hook, who stood nearby. Finally, unable to take it any longer, Se-ri angrily ordered the secretary to leave the room. Jong Hook, still fuming, turned to Se-ri with a hint of jealousy. His mind was filled with the words she had spoken before, about wanting to return to Korea and date someone else. Was that really true? Se-ri sighed, explaining that the male celebrity was nothing more than a fleeting acquaintance, someone who had no real significance in her life. But Jong Hook, still sulking, walked over to the side, pretending to be deeply fascinated by the leaves on a nearby plant. Without turning around, he asked her softly, "Am I just another passerby to you?" Realizing that he was feeling insecure, Se-ri quickly approached him and teased, "Aw, is my baby jealous?" Then turning the tables on him, she playfully blamed him for showing up so late. She leaned in, using sweet words to console Jeong Hyeok, and suggested they skip work for a fun outing together. The two drove to a suspension bridge on Yeongjong Island. As they stood there, Jeong Hyeok reminisced about his younger days as a student, mentioning that he once skipped class and ended up on this very bridge. He recalled seeing a woman about to jump, seemingly ready to end her life. He approached her and asked her to take a photo of him, and Seo-dan. Se-ri's eyes widened in shock. That woman, she suddenly realized, was her. She couldn't believe it. This was proof that fate had intertwined their paths long before she even knew it. In her darkest moment, Jeong Hyeok had unknowingly saved her, lifting her out of despair. That evening, the entire group gathered at a fried chicken restaurant, drinking beer and eating happily, momentarily setting aside the sorrow of their impending farewell. Laughter and warmth filled the air as they enjoyed their time together. Meanwhile, Man-bok stepped outside for a smoke and unexpectedly encountered Cheol-gang. The ruthless man wasted no time, using Man-bok's son as leverage to force him into cooperation. If Man-bok refused to provide intelligence on Jeong Hyeok and his men, his child would suffer the consequences. Left with no choice, Man-bok returned home, torn between his loyalty and his love for his son. Se-ri assigned Jumhyok an important task. She presented him with a brand new outfit and sent him on an errand. Upon arriving at the designated restaurant, Jumhyok was stunned to see none other than Choi Ji-woo sitting at a table, waiting for him. His heart pounded. He could hardly believe that his longtime idol was right before his eyes. Overcome with excitement, he struggled to control his emotions. For years, he had dreamed of this moment, and now it was actually happening. At the same time, Se-hyung called Se-ri, urgently informing her that their mother had fallen ill. Concerned, she immediately set off for the hospital. Unbeknownst to her, Se-hyung had just handed her driving route to Cheol-gang, who sat beside him. "I don't care what you do," Se-hyung muttered coldly. "I just want her gone." As Se-ri drove, 3 cars suddenly appeared in her rearview mirror, speeding toward her with clear intent. Before she could react, they boxed her in, forcing her to stop. A group of men emerged, brandishing bats and ready to strike. At that moment, Jeong Hyeok was facing his own battle. He had arrived at an abandoned factory to confront Cheol-gang alone. Dozens of thugs surrounded him, yet he remained composed, taking them on one by one. Though he was an exceptional fighter, the sheer number of enemies overwhelmed him. As exhaustion set in, he found himself cornered. Just then, Se-ri's car screeched to a halt outside the factory. The so-called Five Stooges arrived like a team of superheroes, prepared to rescue their platoon leader. It turned out that Man-bok had secretly informed Jeong Hyeok of Cheol-gang's plan, determined to make things right this time, even if it meant risking his own life. As soon as Se-ri left for the hospital, the 5 soldiers had hidden in her car, waiting for the right moment to intervene. As the fight erupted into chaos, Cheol-gang seized the opportunity to take Man-bok hostage and fled. Without hesitation, Jeong Hyeok chased after them. Inside the getaway car, Cheol-gang ruthlessly beat Man-bok. When Jeong Hyeok caught up, Cheol-gang pulled out a gun and prepared to shoot. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, Se-ri, who was still in her car, saw everything unfold. Without thinking, she accelerated and swerved in front of Jeong Hyeok, using her vehicle as a shield. Gunfire rang out. The windshield shattered, glass flying in all directions. Se-ri collapsed in the driver's seat, unconscious. A look of sheer terror crossed Jeong Hyeok's face. His hands trembled as he shot Cheol-gang down before rushing to Se-ri's side. Cradling her in his arms, his strong demeanor finally cracked, and tears streamed down his face. Jeong Hyeok brought Se-ri to the hospital, but in doing so, he and his teammates missed their chance to return to North Korea with the athletes. As they waited outside the emergency room, their faces were filled with worry. The memories of Se-ri's kindness, buying them clothes, caring for them, flooded their minds. Unable to hold back their emotions, they wept. After some time, Se-ri finally woke up. Though weak, she wasted no time in ordering her brother and sister-in-law to leave. Then, she called Jeong Hyeok, teasing him for abandoning his post as her personal bodyguard without permission. The moment Jeong Hyeok heard her voice, he rushed to her room. Seeing her awake, relief flooded him, and both of them broke into tears. As soon as Se-ri opened her arms, he embraced her tightly. The 5 Stooges arrived at that moment, but upon seeing the emotional reunion, they hesitated at the door. Pyo Chi-soo quietly pulled the door shut, giving them a moment alone, but Se-ri noticed and invited them in. Each of them wanted to hug her, but Jeong Hyeok, ever protective, insisted on handshakes instead. When he questioned how they knew Se-ri had woken up, Man-bok revealed that they had secretly bugged her hospital bed, taking turns to eavesdrop and update the group. Finally, Se-ri played an audio recording of Se-hyung and his wife admitting to hiring Cheol-gang to eliminate her. Her father, furious, disowned Se-hyung and removed him from the company. Meanwhile, Sang-ah, realizing Jeong Hyeok was not just any bodyguard, but a North Korean soldier, tipped off the National Intelligence Service. At the same time, Jeong Hyeok received intel on Cheol-gang's whereabouts. Without wasting another second, he set off to end things once and for all, unaware that the National Intelligence Service was already watching his every move. As Jeong Hyeok finally located Chul Kong, he swiftly drew his weapon, aiming directly at his adversary. Unexpectedly, agents from the National Intelligence Service, NIS, arrived, surrounding them both. The NIS agents demanded that they surrender without resistance, while snipers outside remained on high alert, ready to fire. Out of nowhere, Chul Kang spun around and pulled a gun on Ri Jeong Hyeok. A loud gunshot echoed through the air. In an instant, Chul Kang was taken down, while Jeong Hyeok was seized by intelligence officers. His team members also fell into their custody. At that moment, Sae-ri remained unaware of what had transpired. Resting in her hospital bed, she played a recording of Jeong Hyeok's piano melody. Since Sae-ri had long suffered from insomnia, Jeong Hyeok had recorded a soothing song to help her sleep better. He had also stocked her refrigerator with food, knowing that she barely kept anything other than bottled water. To make things easier for her, he had rearranged everything so she could reach it easily. Before leaving, he placed a container of homemade kimchi inside. Meanwhile, Jeong Hyeok was detained at the NIS facility. Despite relentless questioning, he refused to divulge any information. Determined to protect Sae-ri and his parents back home, he was prepared to face the consequences alone. Director Lee personally interrogated him, pressing him on why he had entered South Korea. Jeong Hyeok fabricated a story, claiming he had been drawn to Sae-ri's wealth and had planned to keep her in North Korea, but his scheme had ultimately failed. He insisted that his comrades were merely athletes participating in the Olympics and had missed their scheduled return because of him. When Sae-ri learned about Jeong Hyeok's capture, she immediately stepped in to defend him. She explained to Director Lee that Jeong Hyeok had never intended to manipulate her. Instead, he had done everything in his power to send her back home. The only reason he was in South Korea was to protect her from Chul Kang's threats. She admitted to concealing his identity, emphasizing that he was not at fault. Sae-ri pleaded for Jeong Hyeok and his team to be safely repatriated, offering to take full responsibility herself. However, their accounts contradicted each other. To verify the truth, the officials decided to let Sae-ri and Jeong Hyeok meet privately. When they were alone, Jeong Hyeok deliberately hurt Sae-ri with his words, claiming he had initially wanted to take advantage of her. But along the way, his emotions got in the way. Sae-ri was devastated by his statement and questioned why, if his intentions had been selfish, Jeong Hyeok coldly responded that he hadn't come for her. Crushed by his words, Sae-ri walked out. However, her weakened body could not endure the strain, and she collapsed in the hallway. Upon hearing the news, Jeong Hyeok rushed to her side, his eyes filled with despair. At the hospital, the doctor informed Sae-ri's mother that her daughter had developed a severe blood infection from the gunshot wound. Her immune system was failing, and her body was now battling sepsis. Sae-ri's fever spiked, and she drifted into unconsciousness. At one point, her condition took a drastic turn for the worse. Her heartbeat flatlined. Doctors immediately worked to resuscitate her. Ri Jeong Hyeok, who had just received the news, rushed to the hospital. He stood outside her room, helplessly watching as doctors fought to bring her back. After intense efforts, they managed to stabilize her. Overcome with emotion, Sae-ri's mother pleaded with the NIS agents to allow Jeong Hyeok to stay for just one night, in case Sae-ri wanted to see him when she woke up. Reluctantly, they agreed, and Jeong Hyeok remained outside her hospital room, his face devoid of life as he watched over her. Following this incident, the NIS held a meeting and ultimately decided to return Jeong Hyeok and his comrades to North Korea in secrecy, honoring the wishes of those involved. The next morning, Sae-ri finally regained consciousness. Her mother entered the room and gently informed her that Jeong Hyeok and his team would be leaving that very day. Though Sae-ri felt heartbroken, she accepted that this was inevitable. They had already said their goodbyes so many times before. Besides, she didn't want Jeong Hyeok to see her so weak and suffering. However, her mother could see the pain in her daughter's eyes. She then revealed something Sae-ri hadn't known. During her unconscious state, Jeong Hyeok had never left her side. Instead, he stood outside her hospital room, silently watching over her. Even when she was undergoing surgery for hours, he remained in place, unmoving. When Sae-ri awoke, Jeong Hyeok had hidden from her view so she wouldn't see him. Soon after, the NIS had taken him away. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sae-ri burst into tears. She had thought she could accept this farewell, but now, knowing the truth, she couldn't bear it. Her mother, seeing her distress, immediately decided to take action. She helped Sae-ri into the car, and they sped off, racing against time to catch up with Jeong Hyeok before he was gone forever. Meanwhile, Jeong Hyeok and his team had already crossed the military border. But just as he was about to be taken away, Saeri arrived, calling out for him. Her desperate cries echoed as she ran toward him. Seeing Jeong Hyeok in handcuffs, she was filled with anguish. She yelled, "How can you just leave me like this?" Ri Jeong Hyeok, unable to hold back, broke free from the soldier's grip and rushed toward her. Soldiers on both sides raised their guns, tense and prepared for a standoff. But neither Saeri nor Jeong Hyeok cared. They only had eyes for each other. Saeri feared for his safety, knowing he could face severe punishment once he returned to North Korea. But Jeong Hyeok reassured her, telling her not to worry about him. Tears streamed down Saeri's face as she realized this might be their final moment together. She confessed her love for him, unable to hold back her emotions. As the golden light of the setting sun bathed them, Jeong Hyeok was finally forced to leave. He turned back one last time, his gaze lingering on the woman he loved. His comrades also offered their final goodbyes to Saeri. She stood frozen, watching as their figures faded into the distance, her heart aching with each step they took away from her. After receiving confirmation that the repatriation process had been successfully completed, Jeong Hyeok's father, Ri Jeong Hyeok, immediately changed into his military uniform and stepped outside to welcome his son home. His first question was about Saeri's condition. Upon hearing her name, Jeong Hyeok's eyes filled with tears, unable to hide the sorrow he felt. His father let out a heavy sigh, sensing his son's helplessness. Meanwhile, Saeri returned to her empty home, feeling an unbearable void in her heart. As she opened the refrigerator, she was met with countless sticky notes and neatly arranged food that Jeong Hyeok had left behind. A deep sadness overwhelmed her. She lay down on her bed, pressing play on the piano recording Jeong Hyeok had made for her. At that very moment, her phone lit up with a scheduled message from him. Scanning her bookshelf, she noticed something unusual. The arrangement of the book spelled out the words, "Yoon Se-ri, I love you." It turned out that before he left, Jeong Hyeok had set up automatic messages to be sent to her daily. Even though they were apart, their hearts remained connected in small yet meaningful ways. Each day, his messages reminded Saeri to eat on time and encouraged her to have meals with colleagues instead of dining alone. He also urged her to take a 30-minute walk after every meal, ensuring she stayed healthy. Back in North Korea, Jeong Hyeok's teammates reminisced about their time in South Korea. They missed the luxury of unlimited hot water, the freedom of playing video games without electricity cuts, and the simple comforts they had briefly enjoyed. Despite being back home, their memories of that time remained fresh in their minds. Saeri continued receiving Jeong Hyeok's scheduled messages as usual. However, one day, a special delivery arrived at her doorstep, a potted plant that he had ordered for her in advance. She followed his detailed instructions, watering the plant as directed and ensuring it received enough sunlight each day. As time passed, she spoke kind and encouraging words to it, just as he had told her to do. In a parallel moment, the tomato plant that Saeri had gifted to Jeong Hyeok had finally borne fruit. The influence Jeong Hyeok had on her was undeniable. Saeri had transformed into a kinder, more giving person. She frequently treated her employees to fried chicken, and even allowed them to leave work early, embracing happiness in a way she never had before. Finally, on Saeri's birthday, she received one last message from Ri Jeong Hyeok. The automated messaging service had reached its limit. It could only send messages for 1 year. At the same time, the snowdrop flowers that he had given her had bloomed beautifully, as if symbolizing the love they had shared. He had once promised that they would meet again in the land of snowdrops, though he never specified when. Trusting in fate, they each silently wished for destiny to reunite them. By this point, Jeong Hyeok had completed his military service and officially joined the National Symphony Orchestra. A year later, as per his wish, Saeri traveled to Switzerland, longing to see him again. However, despite her hopes, she was unable to find him. Fate, it seemed, was not so easily swayed. Each time she visited Switzerland, she placed large advertisements, hoping they would somehow reach Ri Jeong Hyeok, but there was never any guarantee that he would see them. Another year passed, and once again, Saeri returned to Switzerland, still holding on to the hope that they would meet. This time, she decided to go paragliding. As she landed, an unexpected accident occurred. Her parachute tangled, leaving her struggling to free herself. Just as she managed to break loose, she looked up and froze in shock. Standing before her was Ri Jeong Hyeok. Their reunion mirrored the moment they had first met. Overcome with emotion, Saeri ran toward him, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. Through her tears, she asked how he had found her. With a soft smile, Jeong Hyeok replied, "I took the wrong train." His words carried a deep significance. With their hearts overflowing with love, they shared a passionate kiss, sealing their long-awaited reunion. From that moment on, Se-ri spent 2 weeks in Switzerland every year, dedicating that time solely to Ri Jeong Hyeok. Together, they attended concerts, enjoyed the peaceful lakeside scenery, and cherished each fleeting moment they had. If you enjoyed this story, please like and follow to support the channel. Until next time, goodbye and take care.